The Never Tilting World by Ren Chapico, and I hope I pronounced that right. If I did not, I am immensely sorry. I did not mean any disrespect. Anyway, this was a fun read, and let's discuss. So in terms of setting, this takes place in the world of Aeon, which is ruled by two twin goddesses for generations, or has been ruled by twin goddesses for generations. However, 17 years before the start of the story, a great disaster happened after the betrayal of one of the goddesses. This incident stopped the rotation of the world and caused one side of the planet to become a desert wasteland where citizens struggle in search of water, food, and basically anything to survive, and the other half is a frozen, flooded, icy hellscape where the people have to worry about constant monsoons, giant waves, and monster attacks. So, yeah, everyone's kind of boned. Anyway, our story follows the current twin goddesses and their respective companions as they feel a calling to return to the space where the disaster took place. Disaster also known as the Breaking. Now, both have different reasons for going and different ways of getting there. One sneaks aboard a charted journey to scout out the location, while the other one sneaks off on her own to head there, both in hopes of trying to find some way to save the crumbling world. As I mentioned, both sides of the planet are kind of screwed. Obviously, the sun-soaked half has the difficulties of going through a desert kingdom, as well as water shortages and sandstorms, and the occasional ghost attack, which, yeah, there are ghost attacks in the sandstorms. While the moon-soaked half deals with sea storms, typhoons at almost regular basis, and everyone knows that eventually the world's going to end sooner or later, everyone on both sides. Even if the aristocrats of the sun-soaked side seem to think they can just keep living same as they do, other people who live on the fringes basically realize that everyone's kind of screwed unless someone tries to find a way to fix this stuff. Now, the book has a rather interesting narrative structure. It's split between the four main characters, the aforementioned two younger goddesses of this generation, and one companion each, who also serve as their respective love interest. Each chapter changes depending on who the character is, meaning we'll have a chapter with the moon goddess, or the moon goddess's companion, and then the sun companion, then the moon goddess, and then the sun goddess before the cycle repeats. This means that we'll leave a situation for a chapter, and come back a chapter later to see if anything's changed, which is interesting narrative structure and can lead to some pretty interesting moments of parallelism between both sisters and, both companions. As one could be dealing with one bad situation or one good situation, and the other one could be dealing with the exact opposite. It's interesting. I kind of like it in all honesty. I know a lot of series do a whole perspective switch thing, but this is the only one I've read in recent memory that does it by formula. And one that all the characters aren't in the same location either, as they're in vastly different biomes and territories. So this is technically a YA book, and there is a strong bent of romance in the story. As I stated earlier, the companions also serve as their respective love interests of their goddess. And this is bonus points because it's a lesbian romance with the moon goddess and her companion that's very crucial to the plot, because it's kind of super duper spoilery, so I can't really mention why it's important to the plot, but it is. And then we also have the standard sniping at your prospective love interest between the sun goddess and her companion, as they go from basically being barely able to tolerate each other to falling in love with each other. It doesn't help that they met when one tried to kill the other. I'll leave for you to figure out how that started. Overall, the romances are pretty well handled, even if they're not the biggest thing I care about in this series, or in this book. Now, as for characters, we have the young goddesses, Odessa and Heidi. Odessa is the moon goddess, and Heidi is the sun goddess. And obviously, they have the whole opposite twin thing going on. Odessa being quiet and reserved, and Heidi being more straightforward and outgoing. It's shown early on in the story, Odessa frequently leaves home under disguise in order to get a hold of books for herself to read, which is where she meets her later love interest, Tay and Lane, and Heidi just leaves whenever she wants to, even though her mother will yell at her. Again, one does it in secret, one does it in plain sight, and they both have different relationships to their own mothers. We, again, get this a clear intro where Odessa is locked up alongside her mother in their home, and Heidi is basically going out on her own to practice using her powers as she sees fits. Basically in defense of her mother, as I stated earlier. As for the companions, we have Tyne Lane for Odessa, who is a healer. Basically, everyone has magic powers, so they're themed to elements. And Tyne Lane's a healer, who was specifically Odessa's healer, but she's having a hard time trying to heal her, specifically this dark patch that's, I guess, buried into her soul. It's an interesting relationship because it starts off with Odessa having hid her identity from Tyne Lane, and Tyne Lane obviously figuring it out, and basically kind of being a little hurt about the whole "you lied to me" situation, because Odessa hid her identity from her. So yeah, she of course feels a bit hurt about it. And well, their relationship is kind of evolving as the story goes on, and they try to get over that as Tyne Lane tries to basically put aside her feelings, mainly because she's absolutely and totally in love with her, while also dealing with her own past traumas from the previous voyage that was set out to the breaking point. And then we have Arjun, the desert scoundrel, for Heidi, who, as I said earlier, tried to kill her when they first met. And basically him kind of getting over his prejudices about her and trying to figure out, well, am I destined to be alongside you and all that kind of stuff. He also was missing a hand and has this way of using magic, using his stump to just throw fireballs in the way. And yeah, all these characters have interesting relationships with one another, and it's cool to see how they develop and how they think about each other and each other's narratives. For example, Odessa is constantly trying to be apologetic to Tyne Lane, and I feel like I'm pronouncing her name wrong. Basically, Odessa's trying to be super apologetic and doesn't want her to feel bad about the whole lying about who she was situation. And Tyne Lane's basically decided to put that past her while also wanting Odessa, at least subconsciously wanting Odessa, to basically go back to how she was when they first met and not be so quiet about how she's feeling. And, obviously Arjun and Heidi, originally they dislike each other, sniping, until eventually they start feeling different sorts of ways about each other and then begin to fall in love, because of course this is that kind of story. Again, I do like this, and it does lead to a bit more interesting narrative, even if I do believe some people fall in love maybe a little too quickly, but they're supposed to be teenagers, so I guess I'll let that slide. One thing I should mention are the mother goddesses, and, well, we don't know which one caused the betrayal. Yeah, that's a very interesting plot point, because obviously speaking, Odessa and Heidi are twins, so one of them is being raised by their aunt, not their mother. So one of them is the betrayer and a baby thief, and we don't know which is which. So it's a pretty cool mystery that's somewhat drip-fed throughout the book, that something weird has happened or is happening, and that's what led to the breaking. So, yeah. We're never given an answer in this book, so it might actually be in a sequel, which I'm looking forward to reading later. I say I honestly really enjoyed this book. It's a fun little adventure story with some pretty cool dystopian world building in terms of the whole half-half planet thing. I know the sequel's out, and I do plan to eventually get around to reading it sometime later, as I have a lot to read on my plate. But if you want some really cool world building with some fun characters, then this one comes highly recommended. I say take a look at it. Until next time, everybody.